We're going to be going back and forth because it's not easy to teach this in order because things are happening at the same time in different directions. So we're moving back to post-assassination. What happened in Daley Plaza right after the 3 shots were fired? We know that the presidential limousine took off for Parkland, and we know what's gone on in Parkland, right? But now we're going to go back. Well, within minutes of the shots being fired in Daley Plaza, police immediately surrounded the Texas School Book Depository where they believed the shots came from. So within minutes of the shots being fired in Daley Plaza, police surrounded the Texas School Book Depository where they believed the shots came from. Now it's very difficult for me to shorten this up, but I'll do the best you can. If I get a little bit to the point where I'm at, and I'll have you not write it down. I gave you a picture, a handout earlier of the instant in which the first bullet hit the president. You can see in that picture, I circled it with a marker. You can see his hand going up to his throat. But more importantly in this picture, you can see the reaction of the Secret Service, and what they are doing after this first shot was fired is they're looking back and to their right, up at the Texas School Book Depository. So there isn't much doubt in their minds within minutes of the assassination that that's where the shots came from. As a result, within 3 minutes, they had surrounded the Texas School Book Depository and began to search. Well, they get up on the 6th floor. And in the southeast corner of the 6th floor, Dallas Deputy Sheriff Luke Mooney discovers a sniper's post. I showed you kind of a picture of that on Friday if you were here. Yep, southeast corner. So up on the 6th floor of the depository. Do a little drawing here. Empty shot here. They get up on the 6th floor, and in the southeast corner is a window, and Luke Mooney, Deputy Sheriff, discovers a sniper's post. What he saw was several cartons of books stacked up by the window there that were absolutely out of place, not where they should be, which would provide a rest for a rifle. He also found 2 other things by that rest. He found a half-eaten piece of chicken and 3 spent shell casings. And these are 3 spent shell casings that you can look at that came from that particular rifle. So those would be identical to the shell casings that he found. What didn't he find? A gun or the guy. Okay? Now, this sniper's post is 88 yards from where the president was hit on that fatal 3rd shot. 88 yards, which is not very far. So Deputy Sheriff Mooney had discovered several cartons of books stacked up by a window to provide a rest for the rifle. He also discovered a half-eaten piece of chicken and 3 spent shell casings on the floor. What he did not see there was a rifle. Well, at 1:22 p.m., after some more searching of the 6th floor, across the room from the sniper's post, police officer Eugene Boone found a rifle. At 1:22 p.m., across the room, but still on the 6th floor, police officer Eugene Boone found a rifle. The rifle was later identified as an Italian rifle used in World War II, a 6.5 millimeter Mannlicher Carcano. The rifle was later identified as an Italian weapon that was used in World War II, a 6.5 millimeter Mannlicher Carcano. I have the exact rifle. Mr. Sanford is speaking with Mr. Nicholas and those powers to be to see if I'll be able to bring that into class tomorrow and show you. The next thing the Dallas police did is they took an inventory of what? All what? In the building?
People.
Employees. Very good. They took an inventory. They got a list of all employees in the building and started rounding them up and checking them off to see if anyone was missing. Because this is right after the assassination. This is all taking part, boom, boom, boom. They surround the building. They get on the 6th floor. While some are looking for evidence, others are trying to figure out who might be gone. Well, when the list is complete, there's only one employee that's missing from the Texas School Book Depository, a fellow by the name of Lee Harvey Oswald. He did. He did work there. He was a missing employee. Worked at the Texas School Book Depository, and he was the only employee missing. As a result of that, they got his description and relayed that to all police units in and around the Dallas area because he was gone. They wanted to find him and question him, right? So they send out an all-points bulletin to all police officers and ask them to look for a man that fits this description because he's missing from the Texas School Book Depository. What Lee Harvey Oswald does is during that 3 minutes from the time the police got there till they secured the building, he slipped out the front door. And he headed down Elm Street the opposite way that Kennedy's limousine was traveling, headed up Elm Street. And he saw a city bus. And he stopped the city bus not at a regular spot where you stop and asked to get on, and the bus driver let him on. He paid his fare and got on. So Oswald leaves the front door of the Texas School Book Depository. He walks up Elm Street, hails down a city bus, pays his fare, and gets on. Well, the bus is going too slow, and things are starting to happen because the president's been shot. So he gets nervous and exits the bus and hails down a cab and asks the taxi cab driver to take him to his boarding house in the Oak Cliff section of Dallas, which is a suburb about 2 miles away. So he gets on a city bus. It's not traveling very well because of the confusion. It's big in that area because of the assassination. He gets off the bus, hails down a taxi cab, and asks him to take him to his boarding house where he's living. Now, you don't have to write some of this down. You know what a boarding house is? It's a place where a lady has a big house, for example, and she rents out rooms at so much a week. Well, that's where Oswald lived. He lived in a boarding house because he and his wife were separated because he was a little bit abusive and she was tired of it. She was a Russian woman that he married in Russia, which is another long story we'll get to later. But they were separated, so he lived in this boarding house. Now, he doesn't have the taxi driver drop him off right in front of the boarding house. He has the taxi driver drive him a block farther and drop him off at the corner. Then he walks back to the boarding house. And I'm guessing he did that so that the taxi driver wouldn't really know where he lived, I'm guessing. So he has him drop him off a block farther than his house, and he walks back to the boarding house. Well, at the boarding house, according to witnesses, he picks up a light jacket and leaves. But he also picks up a .38 caliber revolver as well. But according to the housekeeper there, she saw him come in and go out pretty quickly, noticed he had a light colored jacket. She didn't know he had a pistol because he had put that in the waistband of his pants. Okay? And leaves. Well, in the meantime, a police officer by the name of J.D. Tippett is doing his patrol, and he sees a man walking down the sidewalk. You don't have to write this address so much, but at the intersection of 10th Avenue and Patton Avenue, and he looks at this guy and he says, man, that guy kind of looks like the description I've been given of the missing employee. So he's driving by slowly and he looks at this guy, and the guy's walking kind of away from me. Picture me, I'm driving my car and he's walking this way down the sidewalk as I'm driving. So Tippett stops and he asks the man to come toward the car. Oswald complies. He actually walks over and puts his elbows on the passenger side window and talks to Tippett as he sits in the patrol car between, the length of the seats. Well, Tippett then asks Oswald to come to the front of the vehicle. Oswald complies with that, begins to move around the front of the vehicle. Tippett gets out of his vehicle and makes the move this way. When they get to the front of the vehicle on each side, Oswald pulls out the .38 caliber revolver, shoots Tippett 3 times in the body, and as he's laying on the ground, shoots a 4th into his head. This is all witnessed. You don't have to write this name down, but this is all witnessed by a lady by the name of Helen Markham, who is standing on the corner of 10th and Patton and watches this whole thing. So here is 10th and Patton. She's standing right here. This all happens like right there on Patton Avenue. And she watches the whole thing. As soon as Oswald shoots Tippett, he turns and walks towards Markham. She is so frightened for her life, she puts her hands over her face. He just mumbles something and ends up walking down an alley here.
I wonder what he mumbled.
She couldn't tell. This is Jefferson Boulevard here. And what Oswald does is he walks down this alley, throws off his light coat behind a Texaco station, and continues and gets himself onto Jefferson Boulevard and starts walking down Jefferson Boulevard, which is kind of the main street in Oak Cliff. Is that making sense to you now, what he's doing here? So he shoots Tippett, confronts Helen Markham, and then continues down the alley, discards his light colored jacket behind the Texaco, heads down Jefferson. Well, by this time, you got the police sirens going because it's been reported by witnesses that a police officer's been shot. I'm not going to get into all the details, just listen. A fellow by the name of Temple Bowley and his daughter come there and see him laying there. He gets on the radio and calls the police on Tippett's radio. Ted Calloway, a guy that worked down the corner in a used car lot, came down and witnessed it. He gets in a cab and they start looking. He and the cab driver start looking for this guy. I mean, it's a little different set of circumstances in those days. But there are plenty of witnesses who called the police. So all these sirens that are going off around Jefferson Boulevard, etc., what are these police officers looking for? The assassin of John F. Kennedy? They have no idea about that. They're looking for the guy that did what? Shot the police officer. Well, Oswald's walking down Jefferson Boulevard. And he's getting a little bit nervous. And he walks in front of Hardy's shoe store. And he puts himself right here in what they call the vestibule of the building. Now pay attention here because the building goes like this and the sidewalk here. These are display cases that have, like shoes and such in them, right? And then you walk into the vestibule and then you walk in the front door. Well, he kind of puts himself over here on the right side of the door in the vestibule because he wants to get out of sight because he's hearing these sirens. Okay? Making sense so far? fellow by the name of Johnny Brewer, who's the manager of this Hardy shoe store, goes to the window of the store for what reason? Yeah, he's curious, he's like everybody else, he wants to know what's going on, right? He wants to know what's going on. Well, when he looks to his right, when he gets to the window, what does he see? In the vestibule, Oswald. Noticeably looking kind of suspicious. And he's putting two and two together. Sirens? Guy hiding out. Sirens? Guy looking nervous. So he watches Oswald until Oswald goes out of the vestibule and takes a right and starts walking down Jefferson Boulevard toward what we know today as the Texas Theater. So Brewer steps out of the door in the vestibule and he watches Oswald walking and even decides to follow him to see where he's going. So Johnny Brewer, who is the manager of the shoe store, had heard the police sirens outside the store and proceeded to look out the front window to see what was going on. As he looked out the window, he saw a man standing in the vestibule outside the storefront. He then watched the man leave the vestibule area, watched him turn right and head down Jefferson Boulevard towards the Texas Theater. So at 1:40 p.m., Brewer steps out of the shoe store and follows the man and watches him enter the theater, watches him go in. Well, at that time, here were the entrances to the theater, and the ticket booth to pay was like out here. Now it's in here when they redid it, I don't know why. And the sidewalk's right here. So he just walked down Jefferson Boulevard, walked right past the ticket booth, which could see him, and walked in the theater. Well, Brewer goes down and he asks the cashier, Julia Postal, hey, did that guy buy a ticket to go into the theater? He didn't know whether he did or not. He just saw him turn in and not come out. And she said, well, no, I wasn't even at the ticket booth. Where was she? Out on the sidewalk doing what? Seeing what was going on. Heard the sirens. She left her post, so to speak, and walked out to the sidewalk and was looking around. And this guy slipped in behind her and behind the ticket booth and went into the theater. So, Johnny Brewer watches the man enter the Texas Theater. He walks down and asks cashier Julia Postal if she had sold a ticket to the man that had just went into the theater, and she stated she didn't even see him because she was out of the ticket booth standing at the curb in front of the theater, curious about the police sirens, just like everybody else. Well, the two talk for a while, and what do, kiddos? They put two and two together. Sirens? Guy looks pretty suspicious, sneaking into the theater. So what does Julia Postal do? Calls the police and gives the police Johnny Brewer's description of Oswald. So who do the police think they have in the theater?
The shooter of Tippit.
The shooter of Tippit. They have no idea that this guy is the guy that's a missing employee. So 6 police cars and 16 police officers show up at the Texas Theater to try to apprehend this guy that in their mind is what? A cop killer. They take that pretty serious. So people say, well, gee, how come they sent so many officers? Well, they were not happy some police officer had been killed. So take in mind that these guys at this point have no idea that they're searching for the assassin of the president. They think they're trying to find a guy that shot a police officer. Okay? So, police officers arrive. They say to Johnny Brewer, is this man still in the theater? Well, Brewer says, I'm sure he says, well, as far as I know he is. Didn't see him come out. So what do they ask Brewer to do? Go in and point him out. Go in and point him out to him. And the man that asked Brewer to point out this man in the theater was Dallas Police Officer M.N. McDonald. So the police arrive. Dallas Police Officer M.N. McDonald asks Brewer, Is the man still in the theater? As far as I know, he is. Would you please go in the theater and point him out to us then, if you could? And Brewer agrees to McDonald's request and goes into the theater. Now, picture this. My screen is the theater screen. Your people watching. Brewer walks to the front of the theater, looks around and points back. Yeah, there he is, right back there. At the theater, this particular theater, and I've been in there, you've got seats, you've got a row. You've got seats, you've got a row. You've got seats. And the screen's up here, and Oswald's sitting right back in there. Brewer points him out. Police officers go up this aisle, and they go up this aisle, moving their way towards Lee Harvey Oswald. Okay? They're going up the aisles. So Brewer points out the man who is sitting in the rear of the theater, and police officers approach him from both sides of the theater aisles. At 12:50 p.m., Officer M.N. McDonald asks Oswald to stand. He gets close to him and he asks him to stand. 12:50. Excuse me, at 1:50. I don't remember what I said. Yeah, at 1:50 p.m., Officer McDonald directly approaches the man and asks him to stand up. When he asks him to stand up, Oswald blurts out, quote, "Well, it's all over now." So at 1:50, Police Officer M.N. McDonald approaches Oswald as he's sitting in his theater seat, and he asks him to stand up. At that point, Oswald blurts out, quote, "Well, it's all over now." The man stands.